Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del Adie Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so excited to have Dominic Scaffidi with me today. Dominic is a certified executive coach who works with leaders and teams in organizations. He is a master certified coach credentialed through the International Coaching Federation. He has received multiple awards for his coaching programs that train leaders and people managers to be great coaches rather than good bosses. He is grounded in the Three Principles as a certified transformative coach through Michael Neal's Super Coach Academy. And he also has a deep and practical understanding of the teachings of Abraham Hicks and how we create our own reality. So hi, Dominic. I am so thrilled you're joining us today. So lovely to see you.
Thank you for the invitation, Del.
I know that you're a huge Abraham Hicks teacher, and I'm curious, which came first, the principles or Abraham Hicks?
So Abraham Hicks was first. Mm-hmm. And I like to say that I attracted the principles following my exposure to Abraham Hicks. Mm-hmm. So, and I wouldn't say I'm an Abraham Hicks teacher. I'm a student of the teachings of Abraham Hicks, and I've incorporated them into my life and into my business quite a bit.
All right, wonderful. So I love that because, bottom line is we're all students. Yeah. Even if principles, we're not really teaching, we're just students of and pointing in a direction. So I'm sure you're the same with Abraham Hicks. So that's wonderful. So tell me, so what was it about Abraham Hicks that there was something in you that attracted the principles? What were you hoping to attract into your life?
Well, what I saw as a consequence of coming across the principles was that my understanding of the teachings of Abraham's it wasn't deep enough. Mm. It was not. The teachings of Abraham are a deeply spiritual teaching, and I think that my understanding up until that point of coming across the principles was more of a surface level, typical of people have come across law of attraction.
I love that you're saying this because I was very familiar with law of attraction. I studied at the University of Santa Monica, and I got a master's in spiritual psychology there. And we did a lot of the law of attraction. And then when I came across the principles, it felt to me that the law of attraction was more about attracting in the world of form. And the more things we had in the world of form, the happier we were going to be. And when I came across the principles, as I think many people do, they sort of set aside that law of attraction. So I love what you're pointing to, and I'd love to hear the commonalities rather than the differences. So I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you said is, I think what most people do is they think law of attraction, oh, this is terrific. Now I'm going to have a new strategy or a new way to get more of the things that I want. So a lot of people approach that initially, and it was probably popularized by the movie The Secret. And so many will approach it as in I'm going to attract things that I want. But that's not at all. What law of attraction is it basically says that which is like unto itself is drawn. That which is like unto itself is drawn. So law of attraction is really only a law. And as a law, it's just operating. That's all that it is. It is simply operating. And it is no different than suddenly saying, oh my gosh, gravity, I'm going to use gravity and become rich. Now that I figure out how I could use it, I'm going to use it to bring money or something, right? But it's some sort of misunderstanding of what that is, because it has no implication like that. It is simply a way that things are, which you can align with or be at odds with. And there's implications to that.
Oh, I love this because, yeah, before you were coming on, I was thinking, gosh, I wonder how we're going to, or you rather, you're on the hot seat, are going to talk about this, because you're right. I think it did become very popular with The Secret, and everybody sort of held out for, there was no compromise. It was like, no, I'm going to attract the perfect mate, the perfect house, the perfect boat, the perfect whatever. And I think people got stuck in that. So I love what you're pointing to. So tell me more about it. Tell me more about creation, because I know that's what you're really good at.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, this is a law of energy and vibration. And when you look at it in terms of the principles, it is a law operating before form. In a way, you could say that how God creates, how mind creates, is simply in the imagining of something, and that becomes immediately. And now Sydney Banks, with the three principles, looked at the relationship between formless and form, and he articulated that the missing link was thought, right? So that the sort of connection. Now, in truth, there is no difference between formless and form. And Sid Banks said the same. He said, it's not an inside and an outside. It's not a formless and form. It's the allness, right? Mm-hmm. So in Abraham, they speak the same way. So they'll talk about that the physical world is simply a spiritual manifestation or expression. Mm-hmm. So although we distinguish it as a physical world, it is an expression of spiritual. So really, the truth is it's all spiritual. And some of expressed in form or the spiritual, which is all of it, is expressing in a variety of ways.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I often say exactly that. It's like, we are all the ocean. We are all spiritual. And yet there are waves on the ocean. And those little waves are, our fab. I love my human side. I'm never going to sort of see that as something to be pushed aside. But all we are is just an expression of that. A unique expression. Each one of us has a wonderful, different little sort of unique twist to it. But we're just an expression of our spiritual nature, which is the majority of us, by sure. I mean, Dickon shared the other day that, Sid said that it was 96% of us are spiritual, and only that 4% is the human expression of that spiritual, which I love. It puts it in proportion of what we really are, what we're really made of.
Right. And that very much aligns with the articulation that Abraham describes this as: who you are is pure source energy. Mm-hmm. Who you are is pure source energy consciousness. And a part of you has focused into this physical existence. So a part of you has focused here, while the greater part of you remains non-physically focused. So as Dickon is saying, the largest part of you is actually a consciousness that is far beyond this unique perspective that is you and me, showing up here in this perspective. But we have, there is really an infinite intelligence, far greater than anything that we happen to be present to or fully conscious of in this physical existence.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love this. I love that we're having this conversation. I think there's so many people that have sort of thrown the baby out with the bathwater a bit, as far as misunderstanding what the law of attraction is, that it is purely about manifesting, the sports car in the garage or the giant mansion at the edge of the, Pacific Ocean or whatever. So tell me more about creation. I know that creation doesn't necessarily mean things in the physical form. So talk more about creation.
Well, yeah, and I think I want to comment too that you're right. What I found in the Three Principles community is that so many people did throw out the baby with the bathwater, and it isn't only with law of attraction. It is with so many things that led them to the principles. Yeah. So many people were doing so many things that, the way I would say it from an understanding of teachings of Abraham is that were it not for those other things, you would never have heard what was available in the principles. Mm. So you would, if from a full understanding of that, you would have nothing but pure appreciation for all that brought you to this. Yeah. And if it was not for all that brought you to this, you couldn't be in a place of even understanding, of perceiving what it is you're perceiving in the principles. Mm. So I think that part's important. And so I kind of encountered that most people tossed it aside. There was, when I first kind of came into the principles, everyone sort of discouraged from even having conversations to explore what's true in both.
Yeah.
And that was very frustrating because although I tried to be good and be pure, what was interesting to me is that despite all my delving into the principles, what I could not let go of was a continual exploration of Abraham Hicks. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that was just interesting because why couldn't I simply drop it? Why couldn't I simply drop it and move on? Because it resonated with truth. And you can't just drop truth. You cannot drop what you're hearing as truth, put it aside, and just get into something else. Right? So that to me was interesting. And so for the longest time, I struggled with inconsistencies. Abraham is a very different teacher than most of the style of teaching the principles. The three principles are taught more rigorously and they're taught more absolutely, right? Abraham is a teacher that I would say will meet you exactly where you're at. They'll come and meet you exactly where you're at, and they will move you up from there in the conversation. With the principles, it seems like more of speaking from an absolute truth purely with no deviation.
Yeah.
And that seems to be more of that style. So they're different styles for sure.
Yeah. But I really like what you're pointing to, because I myself, number one, I'm incredibly grateful for everything that's got me where I am today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I agree with you. I think when, and I think it's shifting. I really do. I think the dogma is starting to lessen. I think we see the commonalities more than the differences. Sydney was certainly not pointing to anything that hasn't been talked about for millenniums within different spiritual practices. And it's great to have the conversation, and it's great to open it up. And I think sometimes in the very beginning we get a little zealous and like, oh my God, we found the answer, this is it.
Right.
But I think it is important to, like, as you say, just there was something in you. You were like, hey, wait a minute, there's still truth over here. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be black and white.
Yes. And so then the distinction for me is that in the principles, a lot of emphasis is all on the formless, unmanifested aspect of life. And so a lot of times, if you engage in conversations there, what happens is you're pointed back. So you're pointed back to mind. You're pointed back to before the content of your thinking, all of that. That this is sort of the direction, is to go back to source in a way, right? Yeah. And by the way, and that is all good. What's curious to me is that there is not very much conversation at all about what happens then in form. So I see who I am as source. I see mind, thought, consciousness as one energy that is the source of me. I see my connection to infinite intelligence and wisdom. So let's talk now about my living of life. And three principles, there's very little interest in a conversation about I want to build a business. I want to make more money. I want to have a relationship. And in all of that, there's a point you back before these things to that. Whereas Abraham, and this is to me the most fascinating part about the teachings of Abraham, is that what they say is, of course, who you are is an eternal, infinite being. But here's the way I'll say it. You have eternity to enjoy and explore the eternal, infinite being that you are. Eternity, that is such a long time for you to enjoy that, explore it, and really be all of that. Right? And here's the thing. We have less than perhaps 50 years to be enjoying this unique expression of the infinite eternal that we are. So we might want to talk about this because we, all the talk that we do about the eternal part of us, that part, again, we're going to have eternity for it. But this part here, this 50 years, this joyful life expression of the infinite being that I am, and what I'm doing here, this to me is the point of it all. And Sydney Banks said as much when he told people to get off his island. He said to them, okay, enough with this chatter, enough talking about all this stuff. Go home, go back home, go live your life. Because at some point, all of that conversation must show up in the living of your life. And that, to me, I'm so interested in that part of it, is the living of my life, and how do I actually do things and create things and, be and do and have things in this physical form. So.
Oh my goodness. I really love what you're pointing to. This is, and it's so interesting because I coach, most of my coaching is helping people that have, having difficulties in their relationship, especially around codependency, and they find themselves in narcissistic relationships. And, Sid would never have said, in my book, Sid would never have said life is a contact sport if he wasn't pointing to the fact that we do live in the world of form. And we are here. And to me, it's like relationships, how we relate to each other is one of the most important aspects. And we do have to not do a spiritual bypass, and especially in relationships where there may be some emotional abuse, to just say, oh, it's all just my thinking. I should be able to tolerate this.
Right.
No, it's a bit much more than that. So I firmly agree with you. I am here in the world of form right now. I'm hoping to be around for another 50 years as well. But yeah, I agree with you. It's lovely to know what we're made of, but we're here right now. Let's make the most of it. Let's live it. So yeah, I love that.
Yes.
So, tell me more about, so when you work with people, say people come to you and they do have this, I'm not saying I love nice things. I have to qualify it. I'm not somebody that doesn't like nice things too. But when you have somebody coming to you and they have the feeling maybe, or they're still thinking of The Secret, and you manifest these material things and they bring you happiness. How do you address both? How do you address manifesting things in the form, but where your true happiness comes from?
Well, and that's critical to understand. First of all, I should say, and I do pick up a little bit of this in the principles, and absolutely none of it with Abraham, is a judgment about desires. So in the principles, there's a judgment about desires. There's a judgment about what a good desire is, what a pure desire is, and what selfish desires are, right? So there's good and bad within it. And here's the truth is there is no such thing, right? If you imagine that you are God, you can play any way you want here. In the unique expression, you can express, you can experience anything you want. And if we make this a little more realistic, sometimes the God thing people can't really get. But if you have children and you have a child and the child goes out to play and they are playing at some point being a homeless person, at another point they want to play being a multimillionaire on a yacht, would you condemn them one way or the other? If they were going to play and be a nurse and then play and be a doctor and then play and be something else, a CEO, would you have a judgment about how they are playing? Because in the world of form is a playground with which you imagine and you can express anything. And here's the thing that one thing to get over is your own self-judgment or anyone else's judgment about what desires you have. Whatever you desire you have is always coming from, the way I'll say that is, these desires do not come from you here physical. In fact, what it is this greater part of you, this greater non-physical consciousness that is expressing itself through you physically. And for instance, if you're a musician, you may have a desire to write a song or to play something or to practice your instrument, to play it at a whole other level. Now, that desire is actually not sourced in you, the physical you. It is sourced in this non-physical consciousness, this energy that is wanting to express something more through you, and it occurs to you as desire. That's how it feels to you, is as desire. And sometimes we can get really messed up because people tell us, that's the suffering you'll have, is the desire causes suffering. It causes suffering. So if you could only get rid of your desire, you would be at peace. And Abraham says, you will never get rid of desire because you are not the source of it. The only thing you are the source of is the resistance to that desire. That you only source of the resistance to that desire. You are not the source of the desire that is wanting to express your physical life.
That is beautiful. And that is so profound. Resistance is, it's so funny you were talking about, from my experience, I haven't, maybe because I just embraced the fact that, as I said, I like nice things and I'm not ashamed of it. So for me, the principles is about non-judgment of yourself and others. And, whatever comes through me, I always think, you would never have been created with the capacity to feel or experience that wide range of emotions. Like you said, it's a playground. It's just a playground. Emotions that come through you or thoughts that come through you. And so I'm very much, some of them we might not want to act on, like murder. But if I feel murderous for a second or, whatever, I don't judge it. It's like, oh gosh, that's just energy moving through me. As long as as I said, I'm not acting on things that could be harmful to others. But I love what you're pointing to about it is a playground. And when we talk about being lived by mind, that's all you're pointing to when you're talking about creation and desire. That's just
right.
Mind living through you and expressing through
yes.
you. So
yes.
there is that commonality.
Yes. It's interesting because when you think about the things like murder and some of those things, there is no way for you to be in alignment with all that you are and to be moved to an impulse of murder. Mm-hmm. There is no way to do that. So an impulse of murder or revenge or to destroy something or someone is coming from a disempowerment. It's coming from a misalignment, from a misperception of who you really are. And from that place to get the power back, it's interesting. It's like a misperception of feeling. I will lash out. I will burn down that building. I will destroy that thing. And this will give me my power back, which of course, and you and I know, of course, that that's never going to work. To think that anything out there will ever create that connection back within you. Yeah. So there is, it is this idea of what is a desire from source is always a creation. It is in creating, never destroying. There is only, and Three Principles says this, and so does Abraham Hicks. Three Principles says innate well-being, and Abraham Hicks will say there is only a source of well-being. Only a source of well-being. That is the only truth there is well-being. Everything else is a misperception or resistance to the only truth there is. So it took me a while to figure that out, but my metaphor now is if you imagine that the sun is the source only of light. It is only a light that comes from the sun. And then you say, well, I mean, look, I could see very well that there is a shadow, like I can see shadows, right? But here's the thing. There is no source to a shadow. A shadow has no source to it. A shadow only comes into existence when you are resisting light. Then something shows up, which is a blocking of light. But here's the thing. When you stop blocking, it disappears because it has no source of itself. So there is only a source of well-being. The only thing in you is only being. You are only called to well-being. Your desire is only calling you to what is good. That is the only thing flowing and wanting in the world. Anything other than that is some block, resistance, or something like that. And you can feel the difference in these. You'll feel it because in the one you are suffering and it's in pain, and the other one you are in joy, love, peace, and all of those emotions. So you can feel where you're at in all of that.
Oh my God, that is a beautiful metaphor and so clear. I mean, so absolutely clear. And I wish we had more time. We're just skimming the surface here. I think I need you back on for the other half an hour. But I just love what you've been pointing to, and I used to have a fear about the three P police coming to get me if I went back to some of the other things I've learned. But I think we've all relaxed with that one, and whatever works for us and whatever feels true to us is what we share. And I love what you're doing and what you're sharing with people. And please this is on YouTube, but for those that are listening on the podcast, can you give us your website and how people can contact you to learn more about this?
Great. HR Possibilities is my website. On Facebook, they can also find me, DominicScaffidi.com, and on LinkedIn, I'm there and I'm active as well. So connecting there is great. And if you connect and let me know you were listening to this, I can point you to other resources and other talks. If this is of interest to you, then I can point to places, including a Facebook group and all of that, where we talk and explore this more.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful, because I do have my Abraham Hicks books somewhere on my shelf there. I'm going to drag them out again and read them with fresh eyes. So I really
Yes.
appreciate that. I really do.
Yes. In light of the principles, I think you will find lots of resonance and truth in there. And by the way, I also say skip over any of the parts where, Abraham is quite liberal. They'll offer practices, they'll offer tips and techniques and all of that. Just skip it. Skip over it and listen to the parts that, what else are they pointing to?
Yeah.
Because they're a very different teacher and they're not afraid to offer these ideas and suggestions.
Oh,
they have a different approach.
Wonderful. I love that. Really, really enjoyed talking to you, Dominic. And thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Thanks for the invite, Del. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.